Welcome to the Consumer Products Company New Product Development Pipeline Optimizer, an Excel model that helps businesses determine what projects they should work on and when. There are three sections to this. The first section is where you update your data, both in terms of the project information and in terms of the business variables. The next section is where you can optimize your pipeline and then view your pipeline in a series of different ways, both with resource allocations and without. There are also a series of dashboards where you can view your resources, both in terms of your original resources and the optimized resources, view your financial information, and view a series of bubble charts to help you make better decisions. Welcome to the Consumer Products Company New Product Development Pipeline Optimizer. This is an Excel model that's intended to help project managers make decisions around what projects they should work on and when. There are three portions to this Excel model. The first one is where the user is allowed to go in and update their data, either in terms of the project information or in terms of the business variables. The second portion is where they can optimize their pipeline using the Excel solver, or they can view their pipeline in two different categories, both optimized or original, and then either with or without resource allocations. The final portion is where they can view dashboards that will help them make decisions. They can view resource dashboards, financial analyses, or the bubble chart. We'll start by going to the first portion where the user would edit the project list. On this tab, they would go in and they would enter the project name and description, the innovation type, whether it's tactical, breakthrough, or derivative, and the associated level of difficulty, the launch year and the launch month, giving them the launch date, the projected annual net sales, standard margin profit estimate, the likelihood of sell-in in terms of ACV, and the likelihood of technological success. This will give them the annual net sales expected value. They'll also enter in the product lifecycle in years and a series of expenses that allow them to allocate the expenses and amortize them over the life of the project. Then they'll enter in the capital investment and the useful life of the capital. Then the user will click on the Go to Home tab to edit the business variables. Here's where the user will enter in the constant information that applies to all projects. This includes the resources and their respective salaries. For each level of difficulty, the amount of months that it will take in each phase of development, and the resource burden of each project. In this section, they would assume that the resource that they're entering the information in for, all that they're doing is working on a project with a certain level of difficulty. So in this example, this is saying that a project manager, if all he was doing, could work on 17 projects that were all level of difficulty 1 and they were all in phase 0. This will assist Solver later on in determining how the resources are allocated. The next thing that they would do is they would optimize the pipeline. This will call on Solver to optimize against two separate variables. The primary objective is that they will maximize the gross margin, and they will do so by changing whether or not the solver recommends that you execute the project at all, and if you do execute it, when you should start. You can see that if we view the original pipeline, this is the Gantt chart that is displayed based on the original information entered. So you can see that there are no projects that are killed, and each project has a start date and an end date in terms of months for each phase of the project. It also calculates a total gross margin of just over $84 million. However, there are also, if we go home and view this original pipeline with resource allocations, you can see that the months where the resource allocations are conditionally formatted as red, they're using more resources than they have available on the business. If you look at the optimized pipeline after Solver has done its calculations, you can see that there are a couple of projects that were actually killed by Solver, so it's recommending that the business not execute these, and that the start and finish dates for the projects are slightly different. However, if you view the optimized pipeline with resource allocations, you can also see that there are no red cells in the available resource section. This indicates that the business can achieve a total gross margin dollars of $82 million, just under the previous $84 million, without violating any of its resource constraints. Another way to view this information is to look at the resource dashboard. If you look at the original resources, you can see that they're not properly level loaded throughout the course of the development cycle. You can also view this information by resource. You can see here that between the beginning of 2015 and mid-2016, there are more project managers required than are available. The maximum required is 4, and there only available are 2. However, if you look at the resource allocation after the pipeline has been optimized, you can see that the curve is much flatter, indicating that the resource is more level loaded, and that the number of project managers required always stays below the number available of 2. The user can also cycle through any of the resources they want, looking at both original resource allocations and optimized resource allocations. And then we'll go back to the Home tab. The next tool available is the financial analysis, and this has several sections. In the first section, you can look at your walk from your projected annual net sales to your project gross margin, understanding where your expenses lie. You can also look at the key financial measures in the upper right-hand corner. And then you can look at the breakout of your project expenses, specifically in terms of how they stack up against one another and how the salary information is broken out in a pie chart between the different resources. And again, to facilitate the user, you can look at any one of the projects by cycling through this drop-down menu. The final tool available to the business is a bubble chart. These demonstrate the level of difficulty along the x-axis and the average gross margin in thousands. Also, as a visual way of looking at it, you can see that the size of the bubbles also correlate to the size of the gross margin available. These are averaged across level of difficulty. This concludes our presentation on the Consumer Products Company New Product Development Pipeline Optimizer.